Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now this one is a little bit different than usual, but I wanted to talk about my latest purchase today, this Cyberpunk Special Edition hard drive. I had some CEX vouchers or store credit and wasn't sure what to buy. I bought this because it looked interesting, simple as that. Because of delays, this HDD was actually available before the game, but whether or not Cyberpunk would run smoothly on this 5400 RPM external device probably became the least of anyone's concerns pretty quickly back in late 2020. Cyberpunk was a mess at launch, especially on the PS4 and Xbox One. Now the 8th gen consoles used 5400 RPM drives by default, so something like this was and is still fine. In fact, the PC version of the game even stated an HDD as part of the original minimum specs, though a solid state drive has always been recommended. An SSD was actually required after the 2.0 update, but we've tested the game on a regular hard drive since then, a 7200 RPM hard drive mind you, and although it did run, it wasn't faultless, put it that way. But of course I couldn't buy a Cyberpunk Edition hard drive without testing Cyberpunk on it in 2025. I'd also like to take this opportunity to see how well Battlefield 6 runs on this thing, considering a hard drive is listed as part of that game's minimum system requirements. Let's start with Cyberpunk though. For some context, here is how the speed of this external drive compares to my basic AliExpress SATA SSD. I've had this thing for years now, and I essentially use it as a portable drive for testing games across different systems, the SSD that is. Like everything I've installed on it, Cyberpunk doesn't have any issues. Loading times are pretty snappy, and there aren't any pop-in or texture issues when racing through Night City. I do get the occasional but noticeable micro stutter when moving between certain areas of the map, but I don't think this is out of the ordinary. It's a very pleasant experience as expected overall. Let's fire up this old thing then. I guess this was marketed towards Xbox users, hence the branding, but it works on PC just fine. Just plug it in and away we go. The game still has an HDD mode hidden away under the Utilities section, which, and I quote, boosts data loading and crowd activity at the expense of crowd variety, extra loading screens and less street detail when driving fast. I actually turned this off to start with, just out of curiosity. The longer loading times were immediately noticeable. It wasn't unbearable when loading into a save from the main menu, but loading another save game or reloading the same save game when we were already in the game was pretty slow. If it wasn't for the performance overlay, I would have thought the game had frozen. Here we are in the game then. The first thing I noticed was the sudden and consistent stutter occurring every few seconds. It turned out this should have been the least of my concerns. As I crossed the bridge and drove around the corner, the road just decided not to load, along with a lot of other things. I expected some pop in, but that wasn't the case because half of the assets just didn't pop in at all. I thought that this was a visual thing, but nope, I fell through what should have been a road pretty quickly and ended up stuck under the map. I do wonder if anyone else has been in this location. Has anyone else ever got stuck here? Probably not, because I'm technically inside a bridge. Textures started loading in as I was stuck, so I couldn't move after a couple of minutes. They all sort of loaded around me and just jammed me up. Now I could have given up here and been like, yeah, this was a terrible idea, don't play Cyberpunk on a PC with an old 5400M external HDD, but I stuck with it. I reloaded a different save and played the game for another half hour or so, and this time with great success. The drive probably just needed time to catch up. It's a bit old and slow, just like an aging grandparent. It'll get there in its own time. The stuttering issues seem to be gone, the textures seem to be working, and I didn't fall through the ground at any point. Some visual pop-in was still noticeable, and there was the occasional loading icon when travelling between different areas. These lasted half a second at most. If I paused the game, then sometimes this would give me a loading icon as well before I could click on any of the options. HDD mode is still off here, by the way, so let's enable it and see what changes. Again, this is now under the Utilities option in the menu. I thought it had been removed a couple of updates ago, especially considering an SSD is apparently required now. HDD mode doesn't seem to help much with loading times, if at all, whether loading from the menu or from within the game. As stated, The reduced crowd variety does seem noticeable. Maybe it's me, but I suddenly saw a lot of the same truck and car models driving around, and I don't know if enabling this mode is worth it, considering it seemed to be running fine after a couple of reloads before. Aside from visual differences, there weren't really any performance differences with HDD mode switched on after I had reloaded the same save game a couple of times and gave the drive a couple of minutes to catch up. Maybe if I played for longer, maybe hours longer, then more issues would become apparent with HDD mode off compared to on, but after the initial falling through a hole in the city incident, it seemed fine. Again though, I only played for about an hour and a half in total. I then decided to try Battlefield 6, which mentions an HDD as part of the minimum requirements. This is still a very new game at the time of this video upload, so I'm surprised to see a hard drive mentioned here at all, but it's not an open world title. The game is broken up into different multiplayer maps, so it's not constantly streaming in parts of a huge open world. I don't really know much about data or asset streaming or how it works, but I'm assuming that a game like this is far less of a strain on a 5400 RPM external drive. That said, loading times felt significantly longer than they did with my AliExpress SSD. I think I ended up spawning in after everyone else. The class selection screen was also kind of missing, and it took a few moments for things to appear, like my weapon, which, is pretty important for a Battlefield game. This didn't take more than, I'd say, 5 seconds though. Sometimes the weapon loaded, but the arms holding them didn't. Or some of said arm textures took a few moments to appear, as well as the assets immediately in front of the camera. You can probably pick all this up on screen. I can't actually fault the gameplay though. There were no issues with stutter or anything across larger or smaller maps. Now at the moment I don't really think we have any huge maps like in some of the older Battlefield games. I'm not sure how things compare size-wise, but I've no complaints here, to be honest, when running this game off a hard drive. Now, to be honest, the game did crash at one point, but as it turns out, this was a GPU driver. It just decided to stop working. The RX 9060 XT does a great job of running the game, but all of a sudden, AMD Relive decided, nope, you're not playing anymore, and gave me a black screen after freezing for about 10 seconds. Now honestly, I can't really complain. Battlefield 6 seems to run on a hard drive just fine, even a 5400 RPM external one. As a side note, I was using the i7-12700F today with the aforementioned RX 9060 XT 16GB. The high resolution textures were also installed, and they all seem to load in eventually. Now this video has been a bit different, I know, but I'm a bit of a sucker for special edition things, no matter how little I actually need them or have a use for them. Nice to see an old school hard drive still has a place in 2025 though, and isn't completely useless for gaming by any means. Plus 2TB of storage is always handy no matter the medium, even if you're not running games from it. A 2TB drive is always handy to have, right? So there we are. As always, thanks for watching. Let me know if you run Cyberpunk or Battlefield 6 or maybe all of your games off a hard drive or external drive in 2025. And as always, I hope to see you all in the next one.